Hi, it's Martin from Martin's Engine Services. Well, it's a glorious afternoon here in West Norfolk, so it's going to be time to assemble the stock car engine. Had a very busy morning. See, all the garden waste is gone. I've even trimmed a few other trees. So, for today, that's the Battle of Man v Tree, and it's won in my favour. A couple of trips up the local dump, got rid of all that, so very efficient morning. So, thought I'd have a nice sensible afternoon back in the workshop where we're the happiest. Oh, stand in the way. So I've got the engine here, bearings and bits of pieces all laid out ready to go. So I'll video some of the assembly. I won't video it all because it takes a while, but I'll video a few key points and whatnot, so you just some idea what's going on. So I'll just pop this in the stand and back in a mo. Right, well, first thing to do is to lay the main bearings in the block. Very important to make sure you've cleaned the housings out thoroughly. I've given these a good wipe out already, so they're all ready to go. Excuse me. Now, not so common on these current GM engines, but some of the older ones, the old Cavalier front wheel drives and all that, it wasn't uncommon to find an extra oil hole drilled in the bearing, and sometimes the tags could be moved around. You know, there's a lot of interchangeable bearings, and you don't seem to get that problem too much now, so it's not that's not too bad. Sometimes they only drilled the oil hole in the one bearing that lives in the block, and they didn't actually bother drilling it in the one that goes in the cap. So obviously you've got to make sure you put them in right. Some you take out from factory are drilled, some aren't, but the replacement sets are drilled to cover all options. I suppose it's one of GM's favourites of mix and matching bits, and a lot of these bearings interchange to earlier engines and around 1600s and 1800s, and there are variations in, say, drillings and oil galleries, etc., etc. So you've got to make sure bearing hole lines up, tags correct. Sometimes you'll see double tagged blocks and bearing caps, and the same for big ends, and you're just going to make sure the orientation is the same. I like to just push them down, just so they finish flush with each side. Sitting nice and square, just have a look, see if they're visually okay. That's fine. And of course the centre main does have the thrust washers built into it, so that can't only go in one place. Sometimes they're a little bit tight to get down, and you just have to give them a little tap. With a plastic hammer, nothing else, just it's all seated nicely. You can't put this in the wrong place because the block is cut away to relieve it each side, so nothing can really go wrong there. They're all sitting in nicely. So next operation is to lay the crank in. So I'm just going to leave the crank a little wipe down to cover it in oil, and I'll bring you back in a moment or two. Right, that's the crank cleaned and ready to go in. So now it's time for plenty of oil on the new bearings. I tend to just use the standard engine oil. This is a 1030, full synthetic or something similar. Nice and clean. This is the oil can I use for engine assembly. Pretty ancient, but does the job. Deliberately soak the bearings, give them a good dosing up to make sure. Thrust a little dose of oil as well. So right, now we just lay the crankshaft in. Right, drop the crank in, make sure you get it square so you don't pinch the thrust or anything silly, and she should settle down nicely. I then like to just give them a little tap just to settle the bearings, spin it round. As you see, that spins absolutely beautiful, so there's no problem there. Now it's a case of putting the bearing caps on. Obviously the back one's got the sealing, which is a little bit more involved, so I'll just drop those on, I'll get them prepared, and then I'll just bring you back when they're all ready. Right, that's all the bearing caps ready to go. What I like to do with these is clip the bearing in and allow them on a flat surface. Side of the block's absolutely fine. Just get the mallet and just give them a little tap just to make sure the bearing is sitting square in the housing. You can see it sitting in there nicely. Absolutely fine. In no particular order, we'll start with, what have we got here, number 4. And pretty much standard rule of thumb with engines, if they've got tags on the bearing, the tags always line up with the corresponding tag on the lower half of the bearing, or upper half as it would be, and the numbers tend to face forward. Plenty of oil, and the bearing, so it tags together, drop it in place. This one does incorporate a thrust washer in the bearing cap as well. Unlike the Ford engine I'm doing at the moment, only has a thrust in the block. This has a dual thrust setup. Again, the bearing cap is relieved to make sure you get it in, so you can't really get that one too far wrong. Again, plenty of oil, tags together, numbers should all read the same. Likewise, number 2, I had already tapped these other ones down, so they're all ready to go. You'd think I'd missed the stage. Tags together. Go. And number 1. Tags together. I take the bolts, lightly oil the threads, and a bit of oil under the heads, because otherwise the head of the bolt would have been there if I hadn't lost it. The head of the bolt can stick on the clean metal here and give you a false reading when you tighten them up, so always like to have a little bit of lube and all that sort of stuff. Retrieve the bolt we've launched. It's certainly much more pleasant putting this together than it was taking it apart. Nothing's horrible and dirty, and nothing stinks anymore, and it's all very civilised. This is the bit I enjoy the most doing this, obviously putting nice clean engines together, all new parts laid out. Most civilised. Right, and that's them all sitting in there. Now I'll just run them down and then torque them up to the first specification, and then I'll bring you back when I've done that, and we'll just see how we're going. Well, this just shows you sometimes how you can be careful. I've just nipped up the 4 mains I've got in. Obviously I haven't got the rear one in yet. Everything's going alright until I nipped up number 4, and that crank went quite tight. So I let them off one at a time, and now it's beautiful again. End float's fine. And for some reason number 4 is just running a little bit tight. It's not really tight as such. You can just feel when you spin the crank, it just stops too abruptly. The bottom shell appears to be sitting absolutely perfectly. Just got to obviously make sure there's nothing on the back of the shell at all. It's fine, it's just pinching there a little bit. So what we'll do there is we'll just give the housing a tiny bit more of a clean out, just to make sure there's nothing in there. So I'll do that, and then we'll see if that improves it. There we are, problem solved. I just gave the housing a little tiny clean, bit fine, wet and dry, put it back in, perfect. I mean, I know this crank is pretty much spot on because I've measured it. I know that's good. And obviously it's on standard bearings. I have checked that all the bearings in the packet are right, because you do sometimes get mispacked bearings, mislabeled. So yes, they are all correct. So that wasn't the problem. And if you put it on tags the wrong way around, you will lock it solid. So no, that solved that problem. It spins nicely, but it doesn't suddenly abruptly stop. That's exactly what you want. I haven't bothered doing running clearances on this because obviously it's a used crankshaft. So it's not as if you've got a brand new crank and you've got to check anything like that. You can always tell if it's like this. It's just got a nice feel to it. You can always feel a little bit of end float. And what I like to do once the bearings are in is just settle everything down. A little tap. Just to settle it, and it just settles beautiful, and that's what you want. Very nice. If they feel like they're right, then they normally are. You shouldn't have any tight spots. You just have a little bit of grab. Obviously there's a lot of oil in there and the bearings will need to run in a bit. No, happy with that. Happy with that. So I've got to get the rear oil seal housing in before I torque everything up. Obviously it's not fair on the crankshaft. Now, the rear oil seal, obviously I've just got it in there, it's a bit fiddly. When you set it on these, although you can't actually see it, you must just push it in, and since it's flush against the back of the groove machined in the block. Ignore the fact it may be sticking out a little bit and uneven. The back of the block is obviously not machined that accurately. Well, this one is quite good there, but it will stick out. Now, lost the bearing cap. Now the bearing cap has these two grooves in the side, into which you have to inject silicone, or I use Permatex, to seal this against the side of the block. So it's imperative that this face is clean and this is clean. I'll just clean that face with brake cleaner. So I'll just do the same with this, put the bearing in, and then I'll show you how you do that a bit quicker than you're supposed to. Just basically put it in and then gently force it down the top, and that can take ages, but I found a way to speed it up. Just seat the bearing. Now what I tend to do is to fill the grooves up first. Just level like that. And then I just put a tiny little bit there and a little bit there. You don't need it anywhere else because the seal sits around there. There's just a potential leakage for any oil that seeps through this face. These are the oil return holes. Everything else is just left alone. Do not put loads of silicone all around here, all around there. You don't need it. Okay. Oil the journal well, but don't get it on the working faces or silicone seal faces. Because as we all know, these GM engines don't really need a reason to leak. Wipe that clean in there. Right, and of course, you know what I've done. Put my finger straight in the Permatex. Well, don't mind. Right. Now we drop this chap into place. Trying to be careful not to dislodge the oil seal or move it too much. It should just start to go down the side of the seal quite easy. It will try to kick it a bit of an angle, so the trick is to get it down as far as it will and then pull it down square with the bolts. I'll wipe that surplus off in a moment. Right, wind this into place. Keep an eye on the oil seal, that's sitting nicely. It does give you the illusion that it's actually not sitting level, but if you push the seal in there, it pops out a bit here and likewise. So push it in hard against the housing. That's it, sitting nice and square. So just pull this down a little bit more. Now check it hasn't moved. and say it will be slightly proud. I mean, they're not exactly flat, but as long as they're hard in against the housing, so they can't get out. They don't often cause a problem. I only ever had one that leaked badly for some reason. We have no idea why. I took it out, put another seal in, it was absolutely perfect. So it's one of those go figure jobs. I see that's spinning beautiful again. There's no stickiness or anything, so no problem there. Beautiful. So next stage is to pump the silicone or push the silicone down in this groove till it actually comes out the bottom. So you know these are full up, because it'll obviously start going off. So I don't want to do anything else until I finish that. So I'll just nip them down a bit further. Come back and torque them all in a minute. So I'll get the silicone in and get that, because it's a horrible messy job and it's not very exciting. Right, well that's that job done. Force it down there and it starts to come out the bottom in the groove. Now make sure you remove all traces of it from anywhere you don't want it to be. It won't do any real harm, there's not a lot in here, but you do tend to fill up the rear sump bolt holes a little bit. So let's get it all out the way, and that's it. That's better. Right, then we just torque that down, and it's got to be angle tightened as well, so I'll just torque it down for now, then I'll come back and angle tighten it. 37 foot-pounds or 50 Newton meters. And keep doing the turning test to make sure everything's happy. If you do one that's not, pop that cap off and just give the cap a little clean, it'll be fine. That's lovely. Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. Let's just go and double check, but shouldn't be anything moving there. Right, we should give it another little tap just to make sure. Lovely. It's just about the right amount of resistance and just smooth enough. Just about perfect. So I'll do the angle torquing off camera because it's a bit of a flaff with the angle gauge and setting it all up. So I'll do that and then come back and I'll start fitting another few parts on there. So that's your basic rotating assembly fitted and all looking very nice. That marking on there is from where there used to be a timing disc, the bolts on, which we don't want, so you just unbolt it. There's a couple of bolt holes redundant there, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect the balance because it's the bolt on disc, so just removed it for no reason for it being there. Yeah, pleased with that. Right, that's them all done. I always put this, I haven't used the spots of paint to work out the angles, but I've just put a spot of paint on as good as in line so I can make sure that they've all been done in case I haven't missed one. I tend to just go that way or whichever way, no set pattern, but that's it. Very, very nice. Yep, very pleased with that. A bit of thinners on there to remove the paint, because we all know about paint and gaskets. Very, very taboo subject with engines. I know I'm not putting the sump on yet, but I'm going to clean it now. So I clean the face where the oil pump goes, because that's going to be the next item to be fitted. Right, now on to fitting the oil pump. As I say, here's one I prepared earlier. It was all stripped and cleaned. It's just covered in oil, protect it. But I'll come up right. I've had all the release valve out. Been checked, that's fine. I've marked that with yellow paint because that is not done up at the moment. And it's just a blanking plug, but I actually like to fill the oil pump up once the engine's assembled. I like to pour about half a litre of oil through here so the pump's full, pickup's full, and the oil gallery's full. So that's why I always mark it so I know it's not done up. Seal's gone in there nicely. Now you've got to try and align the hexagon drive on the front here. Get some sort of idea. It's a bit of a fiddle sometimes, but that's about right. And as I said before, always use the original type GM spec or equivalent to metal type gasket. Don't like the paper versions. They don't seem to work. These have always seemed to do the job. They positively cake on the two dowels here, so the oil pump remains centralised. It can be a little bit of a flaff to get the oil seal to go over the nose of the crank here. It can take a little bit of fiddling around, but a bit of patience, you won't do any harm getting it over. The secret I found is just to get the oil pump's new enough position, like that. I've got this very small screwdriver, which is exceptionally blunt, which I basically keep for this job. Just very gently tip the oil seal. You should just feel it go over the end of the crank. Can be a bit of a fiddle, but it will go. Are we a bit out of line? Probably. Aha, that's better. This one's proving to be about as awkward as possible. There we go. There we go. Make sure none of the ceiling lips pointing outwards. It's all fine. There is a tapered lead on this, it doesn't really do any harm. And I'm literally just touching it with that. It may look a bit aggressive, but that works. Never had any problem with it. And then just bolt it all back together. Tight, that's it. Now we'll have to change one of these bolts for a slightly longer one because the timing sensor actually bolts on there on the earlier engine, and we convert these over. There's a mounting here and a bolt hot there and an aluminium bracket sits on there, so I'll convert that, I'll change that over later. Otherwise you run the risk obviously of stripping the thread out. The last one. If all's gone to plan, we've got no bolts left over. Just go around, nip these up. They're not very tight, but there's a torque wrench setting there for a reason. They're only they're not high tensile bolt, they're only a standard M6, so no need to go mad. Feels good. So that metal type gasket washes down immediately and the sealant releases from it, and that's it. You can see it goes up tight, nothing moves. So very effective gasket. So that concludes the oil pump fitment. Rotate the assembly. Goes round, seals in nicely there, all seals in the back, silicone's just oozing out the joint. So that's your basic bottom end build. Next stage of operation obviously is to fit the pistons, but before I do that I've got to gap the piston rings just to make sure. Always check the end gaps on new rings, never ever presume they are the right size out of the packet. Sometimes there can be quite a variation, so essential to check. Because of the alignment dowels here, this all lines up nicely, and the same in the back. So, and when I do put the sump on, of course these are silicone all the way around, they don't have a gasket, so there's no potential problem for leakage here. So that's all good to go. I won't put the oil pickup pipe in yet, so obviously it's in the way of putting the big ends on. So that's that. So I'll flip it over and just have a look at the end gaps on one of the pistons, and then we'll pause for a while and I'll get them ready to fit. Go the right way, makes things a bit easier. It's getting a bit heavier now. Just move things around a little bit. Right, grab the new rings. Open the PCB top and bottom. No, they're not marked, so I mean obviously there's a tiny bit of bore wear there because the engine's been run, but it's very, very minimal. Get out of the way. Right, now obviously the top of the bore here is unworn, so you just get the ring just in the top of the bore. Don't want to stay. Move it around, slightly better position to see. Always a good time to lose the locking pin off the engine stand. And as we can actually see, these are absolutely dead tight. So definitely worth checking. Let's check a number 2 ring out of curiosity. No top and bottom. Some makes do, some makes don't, so yeah, and likewise they are tight. So all the ring end gaps will need to be adjusted. The oil ring shouldn't be a problem, but we'll just have a little look to make sure. Oops, the wrong part. Actually, even they're a little on the tight side. Oh well, little operation to carry out in a minute. So what I'll probably do is halt this video here now, because it's going to take me a little while to sort those out. And then I'll bring you back when it's time to fit those. I'm going to fit all the other essential bits and pieces. So I need to get in there. There's nothing else major I can put on at this stage. You can put some other bits on, obviously that gets in the way. And my preferred method is to follow the same pattern. Rotate the assembly oil pump, pistons and rods in, oil pickup pipe, sump, and then build up. I've always followed that pattern because that way, you tend not to miss anything. So, what I'll do then, I'll call this part 1, a quick tea break, and then mess around with the end gaps, and hope to bring you back a bit later on when we've got those ready to go. So it's taken me a little time to sort them out. A little bit of fiddling around, but nothing too serious. It's not often you have to do that as a rule. Most of them are quite good, and I have used this make many times in the past, and normally spot on, but it just shows you never ever can trust. And with them that tight, in the fact this engine will be pushed, so at least 1500 RPM plus past its normal rev range, and it will be running quite hard. There may be some more expansion in the balls and the pistons, and even in road use that's too tight, but in race use that would probably lock the ring in the bore and totally destroy everything. So you've got to check and recheck. So with that, I shall sign off now, call that part 1, and I'll publish that soon, so if anybody wants to watch it they can. And with a bit of luck, later on today, this evening, we'll have part 2. But thanks so much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed part 1 of the assembly of the engine, and I'll bring you along for the other one a bit later on. Bye for now.